What is going on, everybody? Isaac here with Civil Engineering Academy. Excited to share another podcast episode with you. We appreciate the likes, the comments, everything that you do to get this shared. Hey, why don't you share it with another civil engineering friend? That would be very helpful for us. And I think you have civil engineering friends, don't you? Give it a share, see what they like about it. We do appreciate it. I'm excited today. I bring on the founders of Shingle. The website is shinglet.com. Aaron Klemish, who is a co-founder with Wes Turacek, and they both have this brainchild. They had this idea that engineers want to work remote and start their own personal brand. And how do we do that? And so in this episode, we talk about how Shingle formed and really what it does to connect engineers that want to do work on the side or full time as a contractor or as their own personal brand or company to get connected with firms that are out there and really do some great engineering work while making money. So Shingle is a great idea. It's a great company, and I'm excited to share it with you. We talk about the goals of the company, how it started. We also talk about the wins that they've had, and really a lot of other questions that you may have on your mind as we talk about Shingle and what it does for engineers. So I'm excited to share that with you. All of this fun stuff is going to be coming up right after this. All right, what is going on? Wes and Aaron, thank you for joining the Civil Engineering Academy podcast. I'm excited to talk about Shingle and what you do. Thanks for joining me today.
You are welcome. We're thrilled to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Excellent. I know we've done a lot of chatting already, but I wanted to make sure we actually capture what we're talking about. So I guess before we dive into what Shingle is, how it works, and things of that nature, I would love to know a little bit more about your individual backgrounds in engineering, why you chose that field, and how did we get here, I guess is the question. How did we get here? So Wes, why don't you go first and let us know a little bit about your background in engineering, why you chose that field.
Sure. The easy parts of it, graduated the master's in civil engineering with structural focus. Why did I choose that? I don't know. I took things apart as a child every day and liked to see how things work, like to build stuff. Engineering seemed like a good choice.
Any family influence, parents, uncle,
No,
cousin?
I had a grandpa who's an electrical, but other than that, no real engineers in the
Gotcha.
family. So just always, that's what I always assumed I would be doing. So
Cool. So structural engineering.
structural engineering, yep. Particularly my background has been power generation, a little bit of transmission, substations, heavy industrial, and then the campus facilities, piping, lots of pipe supports.
Good deal. That's my line of work, the utility world. So good. And Aaron, how about you?
Like Wes, I'm a structural engineer as well. Been in the industry for about 20 years. I've worked for several firms throughout my career. A couple large firms in the U.S. and then one very large firm in Germany. And started out much like everybody else on the typical track. All design work for a variety of projects early in my career, and then I got my PE and moved into lead engineer role and into project management prior to starting Shingle. So I chose the field because unlike Wes, many of my members of my family pursued engineering, and as a young boy, I saw that they appeared to be very successful, and uh, so as I got older and had to make a decision in terms of a career, I know this sounds sort of bad, but I don't think I'm alone. I honestly I was just looking for the biggest bang for my buck in terms of a starting salary and only having to do a 4-year degree. So that was one of my main motivations, and I was good at math and science academically, so everyone's like, yeah, you should be an engineer just like your uncle who drives a Corvette.
Ooh.
Right,
making the money.
Making money. So actually I really looked up to him, still do, and he seemed to just kind of have this life that I thought looked really cool. So
Well, I think this is an interesting topic about careers and money in civil engineering, because I think in general civil engineers, can make a great career and can do very decent with you'll be comfortable.
Hmm.
But I think unless you're maybe being creative or doing something else on the side, um, it's hard to like really move the needle on that potential to make even more. You kind of hit a ceiling, I think, in the civil
Yeah.
engineering world, and that
Hmm.
makes it a little hard. So
Yeah, you really need to pair that's engineering with business.
exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. Well, let's jump into Single. So tell me a little bit about Shingle and how that started.
I,
Ramble on,
I
but
will.
I really have been saying this a lot, so I'm going to try to make it very concise. Um, it, I, I always struggled with work being tied to location. I mean, this is from day one.
Mm-hmm.
And early in my career, I was or actually working in San Antonio, Texas, but was living in Austin and was commuting back and forth. Um, and there are several reasons for that. We won't get into that, but the main reason was I didn't want to change the firm that I was working for in San Antonio. It was great. Loved the people that I worked with. And I didn't want to switch jobs before getting my PE. So uh, I was commuting back and forth. This was 2005.
Okay.
And the the issue I ran into was that I was commuting for 3 years, and it really, really was horrible. And I was like, gosh, I was using STAD. And, the main job, my main job was basically just design. I was using STAD primarily, so I
Okay.
wanted to work from Austin, um, and still work for the firm in San Antonio. Well, there was pretty much an immediate no, and so that was sort of the spark of Shingle. And let's fast forward 15 years. I found myself in the same exact situation uh, in Germany. I
Okay.
had been working for a firm in Germany. I quit that position and quickly found out that all my potential income was only in the US. And unlike Austin and San Antonio, um, I couldn't make that commute
Huh.
work very well. So I started a consultancy, um, and got some clients actually fairly quickly, and realized, so I was working for US clients while living in Germany, and quickly realized
Hmm.
that this should be a business for other people just like me, that have, that work independently, have a lot of experience or enough experience to work independently and make great money and live where they want to live. So that is really the basis of Shingle.
Mm.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Kind of
let's hear
my
Wes's side.
Sure. My experience wasn't related to commuting, but as I moved through my career from design engineer, lead engineer to PM, I don't know. I got really deep into kind of the efficiency side of it, the money side of it, forecasting, and I guess kind of work levels at the firm, and how can we do that better without without getting a name for ourselves as a hire and fire firm based on each job. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, you almost need resources that you can effectively turn on and off, because not every task that we're doing is I don't hate to say it, but super critical. There's some things that just need to be done. um, there are many things that are critical parts of the project of engineering that you definitely want your lead engineers to do, but there is some other work that either EITs or somebody can do, um, but you just need more people to do it. Um, so it's just kind of looking at it as how do we get those additional resources for even for like a smaller firm that just really can help them move to the next level.
Right.
And you two worked at the same place, right? That's
Hmm.
how you connected with each other.
Yep.
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
initially, but when I was in Germany and I sort of had the had the initial idea, I reached out to Wes. Wes was Wes was actually I had a list of people, but Wes was at the top. I don't know why. I mean, honestly, but no, Wes was at the top because he has a similar personality to me in
Mhm.
terms of wanting to change things and also not being scared to take a risk, to step out there,
Yeah, knowing
and
there's a better way to do it, and
knowing there's a better way, and just having that mentality. It's like, hey, we may fail miserably. Um, we're both used to the complete failure, and
Sure. Let's go
but
for it.
no, I think when you're really going to do something like we've done, you need that you need that risk taking personality, especially at the early stages. And Wes was actually the first guy I called, and we started it basically from there. It was like, hey man, think about this. What about if we did this? And it wasn't too much longer that I was on a plane actually to Denver, and we sketched it out. Remember that, Wes?
Mhm.
um 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper in his spare bedroom, all the screens and the wireframe, and um yeah, and
Seems
that's
like
really,
that's how the best ideas start.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I know a lot of our listeners may not know what Shingle is, but Wes, high level, kind of what is Shingle doing for engineering and drafting? What are the services?
So Shingle is effectively kind of a marketplace between firms and we call them independent engineers, consultants. Um, so consultants would bid on projects that projects or tasks that a firm would put on the platform.
Okay,
So you don't you're as an engineer, you are your own business. You're a subcontractor to the firm. It's not a temp agency. We're not finding engineers for firms.
right.
It's more of that open, well, in this case, business to business marketplace.
I like it.
Right.
More and more you hear about personal branding too, and as you get engineers that really know what they're doing and want
Hmm.
to look at other ways to make additional revenue, I think it's a great idea to
And
get on there.
that's
Thanks.
yeah, that's the whole thing. You're selling yourself. It's effectively you take your LinkedIn profile and what's in there, and that along with your proposal for the particular task that's what you're selling.
Hmm.
Awesome.
Make yourself valuable.
I like it. So, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but for our listeners, how do you envision an engineer that may work for a company still being able to do this, or is that just left up to them to figure out? What issues do you see around that? Maybe Aaron or Wes, which
Wes,
okay,
you can
I
take
guess
it.
I'll take the beginning of this one.
okay,
The quick answer, and not the full answer, is yeah, it is left up to the user to kind of police themselves, as we're that kind of, I guess, third party entity platform. But with that said, engineers, we are conservative by nature. We tend to keep ourselves out of trouble, so that handles a lot of it. The other part of it, if you are full time at a firm, um, you're most likely going to be limited on the amount of extracurriculars that you can do. So some of those tasks might be, smaller shop drawings or checking a calc. And if you're doing that in a, a different market sector than your full time job, um, really the chances that it's going to ripple over into your full time job and cause a conflict of interest situation is pretty minimal. So there is always the potential, but a lot of the times it's going to be an edge case.
gotcha.
Right.
Aaron, what comments do you have on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, Wes really covered it quite well, but I mean, it really does come down to, a lot of the smaller firms typically don't have a written policy. Um, and a lot of that will come down to just, like Wes said, your conscience and your ethics, and talking to the main line would be talking to your supervisor and saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Um, and they may say yes or no, or they may not care. The larger firms will typically have a policy on this, moonlighting policy, some of them that we've run across are simply stating that, hey, in a similar manner, hey, talk to your supervisor, and don't be competing in our market verticals that we focus on in our firm. And a lot of times, really what they're looking for is like, as Wes had sort of alluded to, was we don't want you working more and putting your best efforts into something outside of your employed engagement, on this side project.
Mm.
So that's really what they're worried about. And I think as long as all of that's considered, it's definitely a good route to go if you're interested in it.
Oh yeah, I think
And
that's great.
I guess a couple other things to add on that is we're working with our partners on getting resources for these engineers to you get E&O, errors and emissions insurance, and to form their business entities. So it's not like it's not like yeah, I'll do this kind of for fun. It is a
Yeah,
legitimate legitimate business entity that,
right.
that a lot of these engineers are doing.
Yeah, and
Gotcha.
you're entering into real legal contracts when you perform work, um, with a firm and a consultant. So, I mean, it's definitely not it's definitely not like press a button and just whatever. Maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. That's not what we've created. It's very we're engineers. We want to make sure it's done correctly. So.
Got it.
And there is a plus side to this too. The engineers are getting business experience, and maybe they're working with other people, and
Right. Yeah,
experiences.
there's like a whole separate body of knowledge or skills
Mhm.
that you're going to be learning if you jump into that arena, and it can be very good for you. So,
Yep.
Mhm.
and I know we mentioned this before, but it seems like there's a lot of other industries that do allow you to do stuff like this, and maybe engineering, specifically civil engineering, just as maybe needs to catch up to that.
Yeah, we need to catch up on a lot of things in the industry.
A few other things too.
Ah, well, maybe that's another episode. Okay, well, let's talk about a little bit more about Shingle. What now that you've started it, what challenges do you see Shingle facing today?
Okay, I mean, I'll take that one. That's a really great question. Um, uh, the biggest challenge that we see with what we're doing, is we're introducing a fairly large change to a very conservative industry in regards to resourcing and technology in general.
Hmm.
So, like we've been talking about already, several times, generally speaking, and I say generally speaking, engineers and their management, that are usually engineers as well, are not huge risk takers. And so when you place something like Shingle in front of this demographic that we're we're targeting, they typically respond how you think an engineer would, which is with a healthy amount of skepticism, or maybe unhealthy amount of skepticism, and the here's why it won't work, list, and so overcoming that, I don't want to say is challenging, but it can be an extra step that maybe isn't as prevalent in other industries, and getting firms to realize that it really can be that easy, when they're used to doing it this, tried and true way of executing work. That's really the challenge. And, just overcoming, you know, everybody's favorite phrase, we've always done it this way.
That's true.
So it's like, overcoming that. And what we're seeing is it's opening up pretty quickly though. And we're seeing people that, I hate to, completely profile people, but you know what I'm saying? It's like someone that you would say, "Oh, there's no way they're going to go for this." Um,
Right.
they they are. And
Well, and I also think, I mean, just thinking out loud, but the younger generation seems to be very much latched onto trying to do things either remote, their own way, start their own thing. And this really falls in line, I think, with that and how the work is performed. So I know that traditionally civil engineering and firms, and I'm in the utility world, and I hear that phrase all the time. It's just how it's always been done. And, there's a huge drive in society to think outside the box. And even the utility world has been, I guess, been taken by surprise by new generation methods and new ways to do things. And so they're having to adapt to that. And it seems like that Shingles fitting in line with kind of that way of thinking, I guess, a little bit. So
yeah, yep.
I like it. Well, what are some wins that you've been having with Shingle? Now that you've got this thing launched and rolling. What are some wins?
Oh man, there's just so many that we can't really single one. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, there's actually some significant wins in here. I think one that comes to mind for me is we have managed to catch the attention of some large firm executives who you wouldn't think would give us the time of day.
Wow.
And we're not going to name any names, obviously, but it's that was that validation. That's big validation for us. And another win or a related win is that this last week we had a fairly large firm sign up to the platform after going through our sales process, and them really not just, hey, we're curious. This is a true sales pipeline,
Wow.
sale to a large firm. So in addition to that, other wins are simply validation and just praise from engineers who've been really looking for this. And they're just, it comes through LinkedIn or sometimes through email where it's like, hey, this is really a great idea. I'm so glad someone did it, you know. um and like I said, I guess there's some wins here. We've had some venture capital uh interest as well, as we grow our company. And that's always a major hurdle for most startups. Very few are able to sort of get to this level where um, they have VCs actually pursuing them. So
Wow.
uh, this to me is probably the biggest win, honestly, from a leadership standpoint, management standpoint, vision standpoint. We need capital to grow this into what we believe this really is.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah,
I'm
that's
excited.
our
Those
wins.
are great wins.
Yeah.
Wes, any popped in your head as we were chatting, or you agree with all those?
Just yeah, kind of along those same lines. The fun thing about a marketplace is you have two sides that you need to get going. You not just don't have sellers, but you have buyers too. So
Right.
figuring out how to build both of those sides and give each side what they want. We're really starting to form that, get a cohesive message, and it's paying off.
I like it. So, part of the platform is obviously getting engineers on there. Is the idea, and maybe you have some advice, but if there's an engineer just starting out their career, is this a platform that they could jump on right now and start building up a brand for themselves, or is the idea that they need to be licensed and wait until you can get that done before you jump on the platform?
Um, yeah, I'll start off answering that question. The answer to actually performing work on the platform, you know, the engineers really need to be able to work fairly independently. So you've got portions of the platform. The first portion is really like you can join the platform and create your profile and have that as sort of a billboard for who you are as an engineer.
Hmm.
You can log your project experience. You can create basically your online resume. Yeah, similar to LinkedIn, but different. and more detailed and more tailored towards our industry, and use our language, and use this as sort of your detailed um, billboard for potential clients in AEC. Um, so I look at it in two ways. One is like, hey, I'm going to go do this as a side gig. I need to be experienced enough to do my own work. The second part is I'm a student or I'm just starting out. There's no reason you can't join Shingle and just start the process of building your brand. Because my advice to young engineers is, you know, start designing your career early
Hmm.
on, because what we're seeing, and my general philosophy has always been, plan for flexibility and redundancy to get stability in any industry now. So everything's in flux, everything seems chaotic, things are all over the place in terms of tenures and people at different firms. And so if you plan for that flexibility and make your income streams redundant and have several clients and create this brand, I guess in short, always have several irons in the fire. um,
Gotcha.
and we definitely see a huge shift in all industries and not just AEC, but you know yeah, everyone is their own company, and so building your skill set um, outside of your work, I think, is key. And there's no reason not to start that as early as possible. We're not advocating that you're going to get experience on Shingle if you've never, been working under an engineer.
Right.
Um, that definitely is a super important part of getting your PE and actually having the confidence to do design. But marketing yourself to the world is very important, because we know, and we do have a lot of data now, that that's where everything's headed. And having a basic background in entrepreneurship is super valuable these days. And I think any young professional, any even student of engineering, needs this basic background in entrepreneurship. And Shingle
Gotcha.
is really, really focused on teaching everybody, like, hey, this 30-40% of the world is going to be independent contractors.
Yep.
There's so all these sorts of statistics coming out. Who knows how close it'll actually be? But the one thing is, I know for certain it's not going down.
Right.
So this is my 99.9% confidence level here, that that number won't go down. It will only go up. So people just, they really need to start their own personal brand.
I
And I
like
went
it.
way off tangent there.
No,
So
no, you're good. I like hearing about that. I guess another question that popped in my mind is a lot of engineers think that maybe they couldn't get started because a lot of times these resources or tools are very expensive. The software that engineers use. Um, has there been, or at least in your experience, have you seen that when somebody jumps on the platform, let's say another company hires them, that they may give them access to use some of the tools that maybe they have already? Or is it this is your brand, your company, you own what you own and to do the job?
I guess I'll take that one. So
okay, you got
as
that
we,
one.
uh, so I know on the platform, I guess we don't have a whole lot of information or visibility into that part of it. I do know kind of in our career, some of the specialty subcontractors or engineering contractors that we've worked with, um, firms have given them, licenses to use their software. Um, and then I'll go into the not the legal side of it, although I'm not a lawyer. Technically, that is one of the things that is tested for if you're an independent contractor or an engineer.
Gotcha.
So I guess the theme on that one is use your own software.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Don't take the software from whoever you're working for, or you might be an employee. Um, to that end, we are working with software providers in the engineering industry to get a more, I guess, a bite-sized package for engineers that maybe only need we'll use STAD 'cause STAD came up earlier. Only need STAD, once a month for a specific project. So, why am I going to buy a year license for STAD for $1,000, couple $1,000 when
Right.
that's the entire value of the project I'm working on? So, working with them on and getting a new, kind of a gig model or pay to, pay to use,
Gotcha.
um, something that we're hoping to roll out here.
Yeah, I'm in the
Next.
transmission industry, and they have specialized tools that you
Mhm.
use and things of that nature, and all these cost 10 grand or something to get it, a
Right.
software going. So it can be expensive for people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah.
that's another thing that leads to, the credibility side. It's like, yeah, I can get access to, PLS pole CAD or
Mhm.
and I can use that. So there's another reason why a firm should hire me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, as you've been doing this, have you seen workloads between small and large firms? At least a difference between those two? Or are you seeing work that's coming in from both sides? How have you? I guess how have you seen the differences between large and small firms and work that's coming through?
Oh, okay. Well, we really only have one significant large firm. I mean, our the Shingles is generally seems more attractive to the smaller firms.
Hmm.
So in terms of Shingle itself, it's definitely more skewed towards small firms, but the industry in general, just because we have a lot of conversations with many, many, many firms. We're not seeing a huge difference now between workloads,
Coming through
coming
jobs.
through. They both seem to have way too much work, and each one of them seems to have an incredibly hard time finding any engineers right now. Um, so that's the short answer is really we're not seeing a huge difference at all right now. I mean, traditionally, it's always been like the big firms are sort of uh, you know, let's say, have an easier time finding talent. Um,
Sure.
and the small firms have always traditionally had a hard time uh, finding full-time employees and competing with these large firms, benefits and projects and stuff like that. But like I said, we have a lot of conversations, and it's a problem for both right now.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Well, I'm excited. This is good stuff. I'm excited for Shingle. I'm excited about your mission, what's going on in your world. Um, is there any additional resources that you'd like to tell our audience about?
Wes, you
Or
want to go first? Do you want me to go first? Yours is kind of boring.
mine's
Well, that's
boring.
me
I'll do
too.
mine first. So I took the traditional engineering approach to this question. So I will throw it up here.
Ooh.
Design. So this is more for structural folks because that's my background. Design of Welded Structures by Blodgett. This is a book from, I don't know, the 50s or 60s. And it really goes into the theory and concepts on, localized stresses. It's a great book when you have a project that's a one-off or retrofit and the code doesn't quite apply to your situation.
That's awesome.
Nerd.
Nerd. All right,
Wes,
give
it
your
makes me wonder if you have used Shingle yourself to get a job.
So, okay, for your listeners, I'll try to step it up a little bit in terms of anyhow. My my resources, and Isaac, I'm sure you've obviously heard of him, but anything by Tim Ferriss.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so I'm going to go the entrepreneurship route, like anything by Tim Ferriss. Obviously the 4 Hour Work Week, all the classics. His podcast is so good, and I remember listening to that a lot when I was in Germany. I used so much of his advice, um, and so the main thing from someone like Tim Ferriss is like that I learned is like listen to people who've actually done amazing things.
I
Um,
like it.
Not the armchair experts, except Dax Shepard. He's the armchair expert podcast. But the people that growing up, and especially I grew up very conservative. There's always these people that are like, oh, this is what you should do, but they've never done it. They've
Yep.
never done it, and it's like, well, they've got all this advice, but they really don't have anything to show for it. So somebody like Tim Ferriss and all of his guests that he has on the podcast actually break down in a long form format really how they got to where they were. Um, the other resource, it's a bit of a plug, but we have something on our website called the Consultant Earnings Calculator, and this has been incredibly popular on our website. And it basically shows the difference between net pay if you're working as a consultant versus a traditional employee. So it gives you that apples to apples comparison. Like, hey, if I worked 40 hours a week or 35 hours a week and wanted this much vacation and blah blah blah, how would that compare in a typical rate that I charge as a consultant versus what I'm doing right now? And so that's a really valuable resource for anybody who's looking in terms of taking this entrepreneurship route um,
That's
in
awesome.
engineering. So yeah,
Did you create that, Aaron?
I created it.
They did. I have to give
I-
him credit for it. Yeah,
I
they
did create that, and it's right.
and it was based off of Excel, the first version, just like
Yes,
every
of
good
course.
engineering tool.
Yeah.
Yes, it
I
was
knew
all
it.
Excel. And no, it's the great part about it is that it factors in time savings as well. And that's become the asset that becomes super valuable, especially as you get older. Um, for
Yep.
me, it's like to factor in, hey, if I'm commuting, let's take my San Antonio commute, 1.5 hours in traffic each way, 3 hours a day, to work 40 hours a week in the office. How much time savings would I have if I didn't commute any days a week and could work wherever I wanted and do the same work and then
Right.
make a higher hourly rate? So that number is surprising when
Wow.
you see it. So I'd encourage any one of your listeners, even if they're not interested in Shingle, to just check it out to see that difference, because it's significant, honestly. So
Okay. We'll go link all that stuff in our show notes. Wes, where can people go find Shingle? What's the web address?
Shingleit.com.
Shingle.
www.shingleeit.com.
Okay.
And then
Excellent.
that will take you to the more information and then the sign up for the actual platform.
Love it. Well, thank you both for jumping on and explaining what Shingle is, what it's all about, your backgrounds, and all of that fun stuff. I really do appreciate it. And I guess, if we have to do another one in the future, it might be fun to do. But thanks for jumping on and doing this.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us.
Thank you
It was
very
fun.
much.
See ya. It's a really neat platform. I can't talk. Start over.